everyone. Welcome to the Lion Electric Plugged In podcast. I'm Jo Allen, Senior Director of Marketing at Lion, and here today is our guest, Christopher Ralph, Director of Sustainable Mobility Solutions at Lion. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you, Jo. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so today we're going to kick our session off, Christopher, with a really simple question. For our truck fleets in the audience, just start us off with what's the difference between AC and DC charging and what's right for a truck fleet?
That's a great question. AC charging are very inexpensive chargers that are ostensibly just a switch. It'll take the AC current, alternating current in your building, convert it to a voltage that's acceptable by the vehicle, and transmit it in to your vehicle to power the batteries. There are some real limitations with AC charging that we should get out of the way very quickly, since a truck fleet will almost never be using AC charging. The reasons for that are the power limitation is pretty significant. All AC chargers currently on the market are limited at a maximum of 80 amps of output, or 19.2 kilowatts maximum. That does not include losses. And when I say losses, I mean that it's a very inefficient form of power transfer. Batteries, from a chemical standpoint, can only charge in direct current, or DC. So you have to convert that power from AC to DC. And the chargers cannot do that themselves. They're basically just switches. So you have to now convert that on the vehicle, which means you now have to add an onboard inverter, which adds both cost and componentry and maintenance to your vehicle. You will also now have losses, as you now have to convert from AC current to DC current. So the most you'll ever get out of a 19.2 kilowatt charger, which is the maximum, is around 18 to 17 kilowatts, which is not enough to charge a very large truck in a reasonable amount of time. DC chargers, by example, work in a very different way. They convert power to DC inside their own unit. So they can have a much higher power capacity pushing into that vehicle. By way of example, a DC charger typically starts at 20 kilowatts of power. And here at Lion, we have chargers that go all the way up to almost 400 to 600 kilowatts of power. You can charge your truck from zero to full in a matter of a few hours.
Okay, that's perfect. So AC is fine for home, for your electric car in the driveway, but for truck fleets, it's DC charging all the way.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's the same way, even if you're mixing your fleets, if you have a light-duty fleet of, say, Ford F-150s, low-power DC minimizes the amount of componentry that you will need on those vehicles, and it limits the amount of things that can break. If your onboard inverter breaks, you can still power your vehicle in DC. If you're relying on AC charging only and the inverter goes, that vehicle just became a paperweight.
Okay, that's a great tip, because I suspect a lot of our fleet owners will actually have a mix of some sort in their fleet. Okay, that's great advice. So DC all the way, level 3 charging.
DC all the way is Lion Energy's official recommendation for commercial fleets of mixed trucks or of pure class 6, 7, or 8 trucks. It simply cannot be beat in terms of reliability, of install cost, and in terms of the longevity for how long it'll be installed for.
Perfect. And of course, we know that we're always looking for a long-term investment, right? This is an asset that's got to last.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. So that brings up the next one, which is how fast. You've already touched on it a little bit, but can you talk about the time to charge that's required?
Totally. And there are two big factors here that all fleet managers are really going to need to keep in the back of their head when they're planning this. What type of truck you have and how long you have to charge it. So if you have a class 6 truck from Lion, which I think is the best class 6 electric truck on the market today, you'll have 252 kilowatt hours of battery space. You need to make that up. If you have 10 hours to charge that vehicle, a very low powered DC charger, like a 24 kilowatt charger, is sufficient to bring that vehicle from zero to full in that 10-hour period. That's a fantastic investment. This is a 20-year charger. It'll last a long time. You can buy an extended warranty on it to cover all parts and labor. And it's very inexpensive relative to other DC chargers on the market. If you have a Class 8 vehicle from Lion, our Class 8 vehicles have 653 kilowatt hours of battery space. You will require around 90 kilowatts of charge time to bring that up in an 8-hour shift. If you have 6 hours or 4 hours, or you want to run with only 2 to 3 hours of downtime, that will necessitate higher power charging. The charge time is really dependent on how much a downtime that truck is going to see and what routes it's going to be required to complete the next day. So I hate to give a non-answer to your question, but before saying, what's the charge time on my truck going to be, talk to an expert. Talk about planning those routes. Talk about planning that downtime for that vehicle. And that'll allow you to make a long-term investment that will be relatively inexpensive versus having to change something after 3 years because you bought the wrong size of charger.
Sure. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And a lot of our fleets will ask us, okay, so either I run 24/7 or, I have shifts, but they're short driver change times. So how do I deal with either a 24/7 or, taking advantage of charging in shorter bursts?
Yeah, so that comes down to two very different types of charging. There's overnight charging, which allows you to take advantage of off-peak rates. It allows you to have a very low charge power and to spread the consumption over a number of hours. Versus what we call opportunity charging. Opportunity charging typically occurs throughout the day between shift changes where you try to push a lot of power very quickly into the vehicle.
Okay, fair enough. So bottom line, get an expert to help you plan your routes.
Exactly.
Do we have any tools to help that or any expertise in route planning to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the Lion Energy division, the division I run, has its own engineering staff on board ready to design and plan routes. Even if those routes are going to see considerable fluctuation, we're able to design charging scenarios that can hit any temperature, any weather environment, and any delivery capacity based on the gross vehicle weight ratio and based on the actual consumption of the vehicle using real world data. We're tracking every single vehicle that we've ever produced, all 1,000 of them, across the North American continent, and we understand their consumption, we understand their charging habits, and we can actually script for our truck customers a very inexpensive, long-lasting, durable charging solution that will meet all their charging needs and ensure that every morning when their drivers arrive, those vehicles are at 100% charge and ready to meet those daily tasks.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, that sounds great. Now maybe we'll just shift gears a little bit. Tell us, are all chargers equal? So in other words, can any DC charger work on any electric vehicle?
It's a great question, and there's obviously a short answer and a long answer. And the short answer is yes, all chargers today operate on a charging standard, and they should all theoretically work. The reality is a little bit like that scene in the Pirates of the Caribbean where they say, here are the rules. Well, the rules are a bit more like guidelines. Not all chargers have been tested on all manufacturers. Lion goes one step further. Any charger that we resell, and we resell all the top tier one brands globally, have had interoperability testing performed, which means not only are they certified for our vehicle, they're certified for the componentry in our vehicle, which means the charge port and the batteries themselves. We understand how those chargers will react, and we understand what their technical limitations are. And we've now worked with the manufacturers to overcome those hurdles. So yeah, you may still encounter problems if you buy from a non-tier one brand. However, you can always come to us and we will help you with whatever testing that you require.
Okay, fantastic. Now, the other question is, of course, we've had supply chain disruptions, right, in every category there is. How quickly could a customer receive some charging infrastructure equipment?
Yeah. So we've seen right now with the way the supply chain is disrupted globally, there are lead times of up to a year for many high-powered DC chargers. Lion saw this coming. We also saw our ramp up in truck production, and we built up an inventory. Today, I have over 1,000 DC chargers spread across my inventory of the United States and Canada at all my experience centers. I can get a DC charger to site anywhere in North America within 7 days.
Wow. Okay, that's going to come in handy, especially if you've got a vehicle arriving. You want to make sure that you can charge it on day one.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, we've all seen the diesel prices have been skyrocketing, and we know that moving to an electric can get you substantial savings, up to 80% in energy savings. How much will electricity actually cost our customers, and how do they calculate that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Utility rates are very different to gasoline rates or diesel rates, nominally in that there are two components. There's your consumption, measured in kilowatt hours, and there's your demand, measured in kilowatts. And this is a very important distinction. If you have 10 chargers and you plug them all in at once to go to max power to charge those vehicles up as quickly as possible, you will pay a higher premium. If you are smart about it and you use the smart charging feature that comes free and standard on every Lion vehicle, minimizing demand, spreading that charge over a longer period of time, taking advantage of all the possible downtime that vehicle will have, you'll not only lower your power bill, but you'll lower your power bill for the entire site. Keep in mind, you have one electricity meter typically, and it measures for the entire site, which might include your office building, it might include your warehouse, your maintenance garage, it might include a wide variety of other things. You can lower your demand for the entire site. And secondarily, electricity rates are regulated. Every state has an energy commission. Every province in Canada has an energy regulatory commission. In Ontario, it's the Ontario Energy Board. In California, it's extremely similar. And all those rates are typically measured and then enforced by an ISO, like the Cal ISO or the IESO. That provides very long-term price stability. It also provides insight for your accounting and revenue departments to make long-term financial planning. Electricity will cost this, and that is a guaranteed price for the next 5 or 6 years. Nobody can accurately predict what the price of diesel is going to be in 5 days, let alone 5 months. That's something that's very difficult to pin down. Electricity does not suffer from those same limitations.
Right. Okay, and the fluctuations. So, what about you touched on it a little bit, but are there other tools that can help with managing or minimizing
Abs-
electricity costs?
Absolutely. When you have a charge park installed, typically we'll recommend that you put a charge management or load management software on top of that. And that can do a couple of things, especially if you have a larger fleet and a larger site. It will allow you to manage demand across the entire portfolio, which means let's assume you're in a state that has very high prices during peaks. California, Texas, the province of Ontario in Canada. These jurisdictions will charge you more depending on when you are consuming. They'll also offer you very deep incentives to cut back or curtail during those peaks. If you have a software that understands that it's cheaper for you to turn your site off between 4 and 5 p.m. on a high heat summer day, you can program your site to do that. It'll kill your charger load, and you are now compensated by the utility for your curtailment and your demand response. That means that not only are your EV chargers a capital investment, they're now also a source of revenue for the company.
Okay.
That's something that a software system can provide. Lion Energy is an expert in providing those software systems, in commissioning them, and we work with a wide variety of manufacturers to find one that is going to be applicable and useful for your use case in the jurisdiction in which you operate. It can also speak to your existing building management software as well.
Fantastic. Okay. So that sounds like a must-have on your list of your
Absolutely.
shopping list for your
For
fleet.
any fleet operator that's operating more than 2 or 3 trucks, this is necessary. It will not only save you money, if you operate in a state that has things like demand response or curtailment programs, you've suddenly become a revenue generator for the company as well.
Amazing. Okay, we like to hear about that. What type of questions should I be asking my utility? Because they're obviously an important partner in this whole puzzle.
Absolutely. And one of them is you're going to need to understand your rate class. Utilities typically will give you a rate based on the size of your service, but not all services are created equally. Utilities all across North America, depending on where they are, offer different rates for street lighting, offer different rates for hospitals, and most importantly, many of them in places like British Columbia, in places like Ontario, they're considering this, there are overnight charging rates. If you have a service that is dedicated to electric vehicles, you can speak to your utility to take advantage of an ultra-low overnight rate. There are conditions attached to that. How do you meet those conditions? How do you meet those thresholds? And most importantly, what programs exist for your fleet to take advantage of that can not only lower your bill, but perhaps generate revenue? Are there demand response or curtailment programs? Are there things like industrial conservation that you can take a part that in which you can take part to change the way your bill is calculated? All of those things can be found on your utilities webpage, or you can have Lion Energy, who is an expert in utility management and utility relationship management, look into that for you. And we'll define what rate class is best for you. How do you take advantage of these new rates? And how do you take advantage of existing utility or regulatory programs that can now not only lower your bill, but perhaps generate revenue for your organization as well?
Well, and plus some of them have rebate programs, right? So,
That's an even better point as well. A lot of utilities will offer rebate programs for electric vehicle charging. It allows them to sell more electrons. This is something that every utility wants to do. They all believe in electric vehicles. It's like asking a gas company whether or not they believe in you installing more gasoline. It just makes sense. Utilities are going to be one of your biggest advocates and biggest allies in your transition to electric. And having the right partner who speaks utility is very important in that journey.
right. And actually, you spent some time, I think, in the utility business, right?
I did. I spent a decade working for Hydro Ottawa and working for a few other utility companies as well.
Okay, I'm sure that must come in handy. You've got connections too.
Yeah. My whole team, all my engineering team is uh, mostly from the utility space. We understand the infrastructure, we understand the grid, we understand the overlay, we understand the code requirements. It's what's allowed us to design and create extremely innovative, rapidly deployable charging solutions that are guaranteed to last, well into the next decade.
Yeah, that's interesting because utility and rapid don't usually go in the same sentence.
No, no, they don't. And one of the reasons for that is utilities have their own conditions of service and they expect you to follow them, which is great. If you do follow them and you have something that is relatively easy to deploy and meets all their code requirements and incidentally will sell more of their product, they tend to like you very much.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that perhaps the Lion Energy team is a bit of a translator or a broker. So if one of our customers needs to implement a charging solution, you might be able to have the conversation with the utility to make that transition a little bit smoother.
Absolutely. I really like the term translator. We do speak utility, we also speak human. Um, I'm just as comfortable talking about kilovolt amps and kilovolt ampere reactive as I am talking about exactly what the dollars and cents of that transaction are going to turn into.
Fantastic. And of course, you also talk fleets. So having that combination, I think will actually be very helpful to help accelerate not just the learning, but also the implementation of any solutions that our customers might need.
Yep,
Okay.
that is how we help our fleet customers today.
Fantastic. Okay, now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Maybe just tell me about telematics and how that can help for route optimization and for managing their charging needs.
Yeah, telematics are your best friend. I'm a big believer in the management theory of you can't manage what you don't measure. And telematics are an onboard computer system that sit on your vehicles and can measure everything from distance traveled in miles or kilometers to elevation, to temperature, to battery state of health, to state of charge, to how long those vehicles were charging for. Anything you want to know about your vehicles, you can access through our proprietary telematics system known as Lion Beat. It's the heartbeat of the company. Now, there's an added advantage to that as well. Lion reads its own telematics data. Every vehicle that we have deployed since 2016 when we rolled our first school bus off the production line and 2019 when we rolled our first truck off the line is stored in our database. All the information for kilometers or miles traveled, elevation, temperature, state of charge, consumption data, how much energy will our vehicles consume when they're fully loaded, is built into our telematics system. So when we design a charging solution for you, it is, unlike most people in the industry today, not built on theoretical estimates. It is constructed on real world data, what has worked in the marketplace before, and what is currently working in the marketplace today. We'll design it with data in mind, understanding what works for your fleet today. And the benefit of our telematics system is it's built onto a universal platform. And if you have a mixed fleet, it's not necessarily exclusive to just the Lion vehicles. You can roll the Lion Beat platform out across your entire fleet and start to take advantage of all the data that we can pull from those vehicles, especially if you have a fleet of mixed vehicles where there's diesel, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and fully electric vehicles. Seeing the comparison across how each of those vehicles work and seeing the benefits live of going electric, how much cheaper they are to operate, how much control there is over that price, and how little maintenance there is, there's nothing like seeing a comparison in hard data from your own fleet.
Amazing. Wow, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to buy a truck.
It is a really cool program, and it's operatable from a browser. You can put it on your phone, you can put it on your tablet, you can operate it from a browser. Anywhere where you can access the cloud, you can control your fleet.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Now that's great advice on the management and the telematics side. What advice do you have for site planning?
Talk to an expert. Talk to an expert. When you plan your site, you're going to get one shot to do it right. It will cost an arm and a leg to make adjustments on the fly. So do not plan your site for year one only. What is your fleet going to eventually require? And build that in mind. That means if you're only buying 2 electric trucks today, but you need 10 in 5 years, build the capacity and the transformer size for 10 into your current electrical expansion. You only need to install 2 chargers today, but you need to have the capacity for 10. If you install 2 today and ask for capacity for 8 next year, your utility might not give it to you, or it might cost a lot more than you budgeted for. Planning up front is the best way to ensure that you have a solution that will last a long time and minimize capital costs.
Okay, perfect. Now, for our customers who rent or lease their depots, what kind of solutions or advice do you have for them?
Great questions. Not a lot of fleet managers are in the position of owning the land on which their fleet operates. Lion has actually come up with a series of innovative, deployable, and mobile charging solutions. We like to call it the power station, but really what it is a containerized or open air steel system with chargers built on top of it, along with transformers, panel boards, switchgear, and switching and splitting that can be forklifted onto the back of a truck. There's no reason for you to leave a 20 or 25-year asset behind when your lease is up in 3 or 4 years. You can pick those chargers up and the infrastructure that sits behind them and take it with you to the new site. And because it operates on standardized connections to a utility, the utility connection from our team, all you have to do is call your utility and ask for a standard service entrance. Whatever they're content to give you, this system will operate on. In Canada, that means a 600 volt, 600 amp connection. In the United States, it's a single 480 volt connection with however many amps you require. Your local utility will give that to you. Single pole connection, we can do underground connection, and it is entirely mobile, and you own it. You can take it with you.
Okay, that sounds like that could be a really good solution for a lot of customers.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so how do we then make sure that our customers, how can they optimize their infrastructure charging budget? And maybe the question is more their overall electric fleet investment. So is there a trade-off between charging and fleets, and how do they work together to really maximize their budget?
So there are a couple of ways that you can maximize your budget. And the first is, here at Lion, we have an in-house team of grant specialists that can find you and turn over every rock to look for utility subsidies, state and municipal government subsidies, provincial government subsidies, and of course, money from the federal government. Whether it's a pilot program or whether it's money for greenhouse gas reduction, we'll find it and we'll make sure that you see it. The second thing is, you need to understand that you're not buying just a truck. These are assets. These assets are electrical, and they can do many things that a diesel truck cannot. There's programs you can take advantage of just for having an electric vehicle, like the low carbon fuel standard. These are credits that you get for every kilowatt hour you put into your vehicle. Basically a subsidy from existing carbon markets, which are the free market incentivizing going electric. There's also things like demand response and curtailment programs that your chargers, the actual electrical infrastructure that backs your vehicles up, can take part in. In those programs, using software to manage when your chargers come on can be just as profitable as not turning them on, period, or running them at maximum capacity. Taking advantage of those programs will lower your total cost of ownership and provide a new source of revenue. And lastly, understanding how to control your energy costs can bring that price down to almost zero. Today, there's a wide variety of market applications for solar, for wind, and for battery storage that can bring your in-house energy costs, your fuel costs, down to nothing. And then lastly, understanding that the vehicle itself can generate its own power through regenerative braking. There is no amount of money that is too small to put into driver training. When that driver is sitting on top of a hill and he's fully loaded, he should be coasting down that hill to regenerate as much power into that battery as possible through regenerative braking, and that comes from driver training and telematics. As a matter of fact, you can actually program our telematics, the Lion Beat, to offer advice to drivers on how to stop properly, how to accelerate properly, and how to maximize that regenerative braking. We've actually seen on our Class 6 trucks, when they're fully loaded, drivers regenerate 25% of their battery throughout their day just by maximizing that regenerative braking. Imagine if at the end of every day, your fleet manager told you, somebody gave me 25% of my tank for free just for driving around. That's how you maximize an electric fleet. Those are the advantages of going electric that no other propulsion system offers, and we do.
That's amazing. I'd love to get paid 25% every day for for driving.
Me too. Me too.
That's great. Now, maybe kind of a slightly separate note. Is there ever such a thing as too much power?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, you can have too much power. I see a lot of people today anticipating that they're going to have this truck 24 hours and they're going to be driving it from Los Angeles to New York every single day, 6 times a day. It doesn't work like that. Most delivery loads in the Class 6 and Class 8 markets are pretty predictable. Even tractor trailers, they're pretty predictable in where they're going to go. Ensuring that you maximize your downtime is always cheaper than having a bigger charger with more power. That being said, here at Lion at our headquarters, we have 700 kilowatts of charging capacity for our trucks. We understand that sometimes it's necessary to go from 0 to full in a very short amount of time. But it's not necessarily great for the vehicle, and it's not necessarily great for your bottom line. Maximizing your downtime and planning your routes, planning if your for the optimization of your fleet will always yield a much higher financial status than immediately going for the biggest charger possible.
And aren't there also limits to what a vehicle can accept or a battery in the vehicle?
Yeah, and that really depends on how many batteries your vehicle has and what the composition is. We have, 4 and 6 battery models for our Class 6, and we have up to 9 and 10 batteries on our Class 8 trucks. It varies depending on how many batteries you have and how old your vehicle is. But for the most part, if you've done your planning correctly, you'll never be anywhere near that maximum threshold anyway.
Okay, so it sounds like a little bit of a call out or a watch out. Just make sure that you're right sizing your
Right size, talk to experts. We understand what the limitations are. But again, if you're planning properly, those limitations shouldn't even be a question.
Okay, great. So there's that little sweet spot that you're looking for that just gets you just what you need.
What you need, enough to make you a bit of money on the side, and get you exactly what you need so that when your drivers arrive, there's no fear, no anxiety. They know that vehicle's going to be at 100 when they put the keys in the next morning, and away they go.
Okay, that's perfect. Now, we've had a lot of great, valuable insights today. Could you summarize maybe 3 key takeaways or considerations for our customers to ensure that they have a successful EV transition?
First is you can't manage what you don't measure. Look at your data. Telematics is your friend. Talk to your fleet managers. Understand what you're trying to electrify. The second is talk to an expert as well. Lion Energy is here to help. We are here to counsel you so that you pick the right charger for the right vehicle to maximize your return on investment with a long-lasting infrastructure solution. And the third thing is understand your limitations. If you are on a leased site, do not go out and install it in a place where you can't take it with you. Understand what your long-term plan is and make sure you hit those objectives along the way. There is nothing in the market today that cannot be done and cannot be done budget conscious.
Fantastic. So plan for the long term, but buy for today.
Exactly.
Just get started, but get started with someone who knows how to help you.
Who knows what they're doing? Yeah.
Right.
Who's been around the block and has the experience to talk about what works for fleets today and what hasn't worked for fleets in the past.
Okay, that's great advice. Well, on that note, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us today. We've learned a lot of valuable insights, and I can't wait for our next conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.